JavaScript doesn't have to be like your old college dorm room or anything like that, right? You don't have to use the evil parts, right? There's some actually really cool engineering going on in AngularJS, right? So how do they do that? Well, they do that by following this philosophy of separating DOM manipulation from your code logic. So you don't do any DOM manipulation in AngularJS, right? One of the other more important philosophies is that testing is just as important as writing the code of the business logic in the first place, right? As a matter of fact, it's so important that they've invented 2 new JavaScript runners as part of it. Karma, which is the first one. And then since they've invented a new one called Protractor. I love this because it's called all about finding the right angle. Protractor is an Angular aware, Selenium, WebDriver, really cool stuff. Okay? So how do they do this, though? How do you end up writing an app with no DOM manipulation? For those of you who've done jQuery, it's all about DOM manipulation. So it stands it on the head. Right? Well, they do that through this extensible HTML, declarative syntax in the HTML. Right? It's also called directives. So you can have a little bit of markup in your HTML that says you go through a loop over a collection of items, and see how they render out a bunch of HTML as part of that. Or turn off, or turn on, show or hide some part of your document as part of your some expression evaluation, right? So it's really cool. These are all parts of directives. We'll talk about those in a little bit. So, expression evaluation. So there's all kinds of really cool expressions, neat filters you can do with it. It's all very powerful. It all does that kind of stuff. Now this is a 2-hour workshop that I do on Angular. So for the rest of these slides, I'm going to burn through them pretty quickly, just to talk about some of the highlights to make sure that there's, that there's certain features there. I haven't forgotten about them or anything like that. But two-way data binding, that's there. Model view controller, definitely has model view controller. Dependency injection, right? CSS enabled animations, that's all there. It's got this cool thing called $resource. This is really cool. It's an ORM for your RESTful API. So it's this really cool little wrapper thing that you don't have to work down at HTTP anymore. You can do the higher level $resource. It's a really cool implementation. Kind of makes life really easy. Once you have $resource, you can wrap that in a service abstraction, right? And start having just an API that's all about your profile service, right? You can have a service like that. And since resource is implemented with promises, you can return your promise back from your resource call, and that will automatically be resolved once, your variable assignment will automatically be resolved once your resource or your promise resolves. No more global state. This is a really interesting thing here. You'll notice that as I go through my list of comments, right, I've got a variable here called comment. I don't have to comment, have to index into that comments collection as I go through. It's a really cool part about directives is an isolated state. That's some really cool stuff. Right? Testable, very testable. Because of the dependency injection, you can go through and do all kinds of testing. You can stub out HTTP, you can stub out your services, anything you want to knock out that all this works. Right? It's extensible HTML. So you can define new behavior. Right? This is that directives part. This is the really unique thing about Angular, is that in using a directive, you can attach behavior to a section of your document just by attaching it to the HTML. So what would be an example of that? Well, I was working on a project and I needed a date time picker. So I looked through the internet like you normally do. You Google around, and I looked for a date time picker, and I found one written in jQuery. 1,600 lines of code. I would have had to have written an adapter for it to get it to work in Angular. I wrote it in pure Angular, 300 lines of code. So it's very, very lightweight, very small, easy to do, and not one single line of DOM manipulation code in all of that. The jQuery implementation, almost all DOM manipulation. So my experience so far, like anything, you start out and it sounds, hey, this is really cool and I'm excited about it. And you learn a little bit about it and you're like, that's a little weird. It's a little weird, I don't get what they're doing there. And then you get the little data binding, you go, oh, and then you start to understand, you get a little bit of a data binding thing, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you know, you get a little up and down and up and down. But boy, I'm definitely at the path right now. This is the most awesome JavaScript framework ever. I can get more done with fewer lines of code than anything I've ever encountered, right? That's been my experience so far. So what should you do? Go out and give it a try. Tell me if it's the best JavaScript framework you've ever encountered, right? Give it a shot. Try it out, play around, have fun. Thank you.